ball out to Johannesson. This man's got fantastic speed, very tricky dribbler.
He was a very, very humble man, and you realise how difficult it must have been for him to come across to England without a great deal of support. In those days, obviously, when Albert was playing, it wasn't wall-to-wall TV, so there was no imagery, there was no visibility of him. But of course, in a cup final, there was. And I think for young black aspiring players looking to maybe go into football, to see him playing at Wembley was a fantastic thing.
And I think it empowered us because, you know, my career thereafter, you know, I became Chelsea's first black captain, first black player to play in, English player to play in Scotland, first the same in Italy as well. And obviously myself being in receipt of a lot of the issues around, you know, racial abuse. But I use it as a means to empower me, to inspire me, and I'm sure Johansson done the same, to say, hey, we're going to go out there and give 110% and set example in the way we played, the way we applied ourselves, and focused it around excellence and delivery on the pitch in that regard.
I think he
out to Cunningham. The booing of the black players paid off there, or repaid by...
We sadly see all too often racism in football across the world. Still, we have players who stand up and speak out. We have players who try and ignore it. We had Kevin Prince Boateng playing for Milan in Italy just last year. He decided to walk off the pitch midway through a match. And we had a player in Spain on Sunday who decided to tackle the issue with some humour. And I have to say, he's made his point incredibly well indeed. Barcelona and Brazilian defender Dani Alves was preparing to take a corner when a banana got thrown at him, and without skipping a beat, he picked up the banana, peeled it, and he decided to take a bite before carrying on with the action and delivering that ball into the box.
Both the FA and England under-21s captain Jordan Henderson have condemned the actions by those involved in the racism and violence that happened last night in Serbia as England beat the team 1-0 in a European Championship playoff match. Apparently, chairs were ripped up from the stadium, coins, stones and other missiles were thrown from the crowd onto the pitch. And it seems incredulous that after being one of the targets of monkey chanting, black player Danny Rose was sent off after the final whistle for responding angrily to those taunts.
Isn't on the pitch.
It's not a question of kicking it out of the game, it's a question of kicking it out of society. As long as it exists in society, it will exist in all walks of society, of which football is one. You cannot target racism in football unless you target it in society. So we're going about it the wrong way. So because football is high profile and media attentive, everybody focuses on football. However, you have to look at it, the bigger picture, to say because football players are members of society first, then they're footballers and football fans.
Well, you're careful saying that. I mean, we're saying that, and we led into that. That's if they were to beat us.
Yeah.
But saying the West Germans, I think, probably the only team, the way they're playing, are capable of beating the Italians on their home soil. But that's without the nigger in the woodpile, our own little club here, and their little nation that's got a great chance. Because
and sitting in the living room, you know, because he's such a nice kid. I don't think he'd ever be big-headed. No, he's got a lovely suntan, but he wouldn't be big-headed.
I think possibly the greatest single factor in how well I'm playing at the moment is that I'm settled into one position now, whereas before, since Terry Venables left the club, various managers have tried me in different positions and it hasn't quite come off for me. And for the first time in a long while, I'm in a settled position.
But I wonder how much the fact that when you were 17 you had an awful lot of publicity about you. It was a television documentary. Everyone said you were the best black player in the country, and that must have been difficult to live up to.
Yes, I think a lot of that was propaganda on firstly Malcolm Allison's part into maybe making me believe in myself a little bit more, because when I first came to Crystal Palace as a 14-year-old, I was very introvert.
Mapes forward, good ball. Hope Powell here drives the shot in. What a goal! It's a fabulous strike, and the gamble has paid off for Hope Powell.
Rewind.
Oh, what a goal that was. There's talking
Rewind. Can I just say something? Before this game, someone said to me, "Oh, Rachel Brown, she's only a young kid. She can't handle high balls." Honest to God, that's what somebody said.
Because I was 5'1".
Because she was quite small. But actually, on this day, if you watch the whole game, and this is credit to Rachel, I should have probably scored 3 goals. And I think for a 15-year-old kid at the time, made, 2 outstanding saves.
It's more than 20 years since Paul Canaville played professional football in Britain. More than 20 years since he was subjected to serious and sustained racial abuse, and it scarred him for life.
It was an experience I'll never forget, and I think nobody else would let me forget, you know what I mean? It was unbelievable. The words that were said, it was just, you can't forget them. I can't forget them. And I don't think anybody who's been racially abused would forget words like so.
British football is barely recognisable from the day that Canaville made his debut for Chelsea. The club's Stamford Bridge ground has been totally rebuilt, and so has the team.
It's great for me to be involved in this now. It's 28 years. When I was 19, first time I was there at Chelsea. A player called Paul Canaville was our substitute command, got booed. It was only my 3rd game for Chelsea. And after the game I said, well, I'm not talking about the game, I'd scored the winning goal. And I said after the game, not talking to the press, just saying I'm disgusted with the Chelsea fans for booing a black player. I believe it was the first time that any player had said anything against racism in professional football, because we're all told in those days not to say anything. I come from a background of sort of degree education and anti-Nazi League and all that sort of stuff, and I couldn't shut my mouth. That's never stopped. And it was kind of hard because I was dragged in by various players. The manager, the chairman said, you can't open your mouth about that sort of thing, it's not a done thing. Spill forward 28 years, we're all doing it now. It's the norm. It's exactly where we should be. We've come a long way in that period of time. From the period I was kick racing at football, stuff with Gordon Taylor and the Union down there. It's now global, it's now international, but it's not time to relax yet. We need to keep on working at it.
So you're happy with everything?
So far it couldn't have gone better. I mean, the facility's fantastic. Where we're staying is very good as well. The people are treating us really well, and the boys have applied themselves well also.
I mean, it's one of those. It's still over a week until our first game. We've got a match now against Uruguay tomorrow. The lads look like they're itching to get in the proper game themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you can see in training they've upped the tempo a little bit, and they're starting to take on board a few things that Peter and myself have put into place. All of us, want to represent the country, and we want to do the best we can. So, the attitude of the boys has been fantastic.
I've just seen some of the shooting going on down there. There's some impressive.
Laurie Cunningham made not much more than a century of appearances for Albion, but in every match he appeared, he supplied those who saw him with a lifetime of memories.
Laurie Cunningham, probably the most visual striker I've ever played with. He had pace and his grace and a lot of style in how he played. A great play to watch, great feet.
And now Cunningham against Buckley. Got the cross in, Willie Johnston. Regis, oh yes. 2-1. Cyril Regis.
Fantastic athlete. Very supple, quite balletic in his movements, really, around on his toes. Saw him play some fantastic games, and sometimes it's only when you lose a player that you realise how good he is. He was an outstanding talent.
Arsenal for me is it's a fairy tale story for me. Then I played the first game and scored. I played the Saturday and scored the hat-trick. Bang, you know what I mean? The wheels were rolling. I was on my way.
It was not only Wright's goals, but his raw passion that earned him a unique response from the Arsenal faithful.
Wright was such an extrovert. He was in your face all the time that you couldn't avoid him. And he was funny and he was good.
Wright's there!
I'm sure a lot of people became fans of Ian Wright who'd never been fans of a black footballer before.
He had an improvisation about him that was very, very difficult to mark him and contain him, and he was always very vocal, and you know, he's a physical lad as well.
Ian Wright, some more pushing and shoving in there.
Because of his style and his aggression, Wright used to scare people, and I don't know how Wright scares anyone. Because he's just the most... I mean, please, look at Wrighty, little skinny Wrighty. He can't fight anybody, but when he used to terrorise centre-halves, goalkeepers, everybody was afraid of Wrighty.
Wright goes clattering into Mims there, and the goalkeeper none too pleased about that.
Playing against him is frightening, because he scores goals that nobody else can.
Morgan's cross, and Hilaire scores superbly.
Arsenal come streaming forward now in surely what will be their last attack. A good ball by Dixon, finding Smith. But Thomas charging through the midfield. Thomas, it's up for grabs now. Thomas, right at the end.
Davis. Talbot squeezing it through for Sunderland. Oh, and it's a goal there, scored by Davis. Paul Davis, it's there!
In the centre forward position here. The others are to his left at the moment, apart from Perryman. Here comes Crooks. It's Crooks! It's there! Garth Brooks for Spurs. Hesitation in the defence. There's Glenn Hoddle. Oh. Crooks is going through here. Oh, he's outpaced them. Crooks is there. Oh, yes! Number 2 for Crooks. Number 2 for Tottenham. And a magnificent ball by Glenn Hoddle.
Villa. Hoddle. Oh, the chance here for Archibald. Crooks!
To Wegley. Played to Harford, played on to Ricky Hill. There's the counter-attack. A brilliant goal by Ricky Hill. And that almost certainly will put Southampton out of this Littlewoods Cup and Luton through to a semi-final against West Ham. Harford. Ajobi. Lovely turn by him. Time to measure up the cross, finding Ricky Hill. A splendid goal. 4-1.
That's his cross. Dwight York! Yes, 1-0. Dwight York scores from Cole's cross.
York has tripped him straight away. Lovely control on the chest, played into Andy Cole now! And that's 3-0 to Manchester United.
Impey. Still Impey! Southall no chance.
An excellent run here by Robert Lee. Paul Mortimer volleying past John Lukic. The immediate response from...
does, perhaps not for the reason that Harry Gale wants to be remembered just for the fact that he was black, but the fact is he was our first black player, and that was an important milestone. He joined the club in 1977, and no one who was black had ever played before for the club.
We're still goalless at half-time, but Swindon goalkeeper Fraser Digby was punished early in the second half for apparently carrying the ball outside his area. Howard Gale's free kick giving Blackburn an unlikely lead.
A bit of history here today. For the first time, 3 coloured players in a First Division team. Clyde Best, just 21, and 2 teenagers, Adi Coker from Nigeria, and a young fullback, Clive Charles.
One down the left again, and Booking spotted him. Coker in the middle. Yes! Adi Coker! The 2 youngsters for West Ham. Locke, who made a brilliant run, Brooking, who found him, and Coker from the sharpest of sharp angles.
And Troy got up. Cannaville. Well taken.
Chelsea lead 1-0.
Paul Campbell, and I'm talking about Football First. I'm sorry that I won't be there this evening to share with you. I've had a life-threatening operation, is the reason why I'm not there with you. But I know you're going to be rewarded today with my peers, players that I used to play with and used to watch as well. The likes of Howard Gale, Les Ferdinand, John Barnes, even my good friend Pat Nevin, Ricky Hill, Paul Elliott, Chris Ramsey, and not even forgetting the first black women's manager's football team, Hope Powell. I expect a real good evening, and obviously for you as an audience, I expect you to ask as many questions as you can, because you will find out the stories of how it was for black players at the time and players to be a professional footballer back in the 80s, even the 70s. So once again, my apologies for not being there, but I hope you enjoy yourselves, and I know I'm going to miss being with my peers as well as sharing with you as well. So enjoy Football First, and support the Paul Campbell Foundation. Thank you once again.
Do you like a little bit of nostalgia? It's important because there are some younger people here who weren't even born when some of these people were paving the way for them to be on the journeys they're on now. I'm going to ask Councillor Sue Fenimore, wherever Sue is, please give her a massive round of applause, and I'll tell you why when she gets up here. I came to Hammersmith and Fulham Council and said that we have this idea, we want to get an evening where we get players talking during Black History Month about their past struggles. It took about 60 seconds for Sue to say yes. And she said, as long as you can get Paul Campbell and Pat Nevin. So you can guess what team she supports. Yeah, no, she don't like football. Ladies and gents, please, Councillor Sue Fenimore.
Thank you very much, everybody. I do have rather an embarrassing story that I'll share with some of you later on about in the 1980s when I was walking down the King's Road and I walked into a well-known shop and I walked straight into my footballing hero Pat Nevin and made a complete tit of myself. So I might share that with you later. But I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted that we here in Hammersmith and Fulham are hosting this event. It's fantastic, and I'd like to thank Jeff very, very much for coming to us and suggesting it as an idea. It's absolutely wonderful. I do remember being in the Shed End in the 1980s, and I was one of very, very few female fans in those days, and it was made quite clear to me on regular occasions that actually this wasn't the place for me. So me being a bit of a hard ass decided that wasn't going to be the case, and I carried on going. And I carried on watching these fantastic players. But I will absolutely never forget the day that Paul Campbell came on to play. And I was appalled and horrified at the response that he got from his fans. It will live with me forever, really. Absolutely shocking behaviour. When we've moved on a long, long way since then, but I still believe we've got a long way to go. Hammersmith and Fulham, as you well know, host 3 amazing football teams, and that we're very proud of. But we will not tolerate in Hammersmith and Fulham any form of racism. We will not tolerate any hate crime in this borough. And wherever and whenever we see it, we will kick it out. So thank you very much indeed for coming tonight. I hope you have a fantastic evening. I cannot wait. I've been overly excited about this for weeks and weeks and weeks. Enjoy, and I'll tell you that story later. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Sue. Just a few words before I introduce the panel. There's a guy here. Where's John Druitt? Where's John? John Druitt, please stand. Paul has asked me to mention this. At a time when there were very few faces in the crowd that were friends of Paul's, Paul remembers a distinct voice that when other supporters were giving him racist abuse, a voice from the crowd said, "Oi, he plays for us, he's one of us, shut up." And yeah, Paul said he took a look in the crowd, he couldn't believe what he heard, And both he and John Druitt have become fantastic friends ever since. He said he's never forgotten that, John. And said I had to mention it, otherwise he wouldn't speak to me again. Well, you know Paul already. He's not speaking to me now anyway, but there you go. Say a few words about the Paul Canoville Foundation. Gary, where's Gary Trousdale? Gary? I know Gary wasn't feeling well. Gary, please give him a round of applause. You can do it from there if you want. Gal will come up. The choice is yours. Gal will say a few words about the Paul Canoville Foundation, and then we'll bring on our wonderful panel with a wonderful poet called Joe Kurup, and then we'll get into the niceties of the evening.
Thank you, Jeff. Firstly, on behalf of the Paul Canoville Foundation, big thank you to Jeff and all the organisers tonight, because it's a fabulous event. You heard Paul say a few words from his hospital bed. I'm going to start this off actually with a really bit of uplifting news, because today Paul's been let out of hospital after five weeks. He's got a long way to go recovery-wise. It was a very, very life-threatening, very life-threatening operation that he had, and it is going to be a long, hard road. We've put a team in place to help him rebuild the foundation, restructure the foundation. It's the same team that actually built Rio Ferdinand's foundation for him, and it will be around sport for development and teaching young people the important principles and the kind of skills that Paul has had and has demonstrated so many times, resilience, to overcome all manner of obstacles. And this is the latest one that Paul's had to overcome. And by the way, if you've seen the size of John, you can imagine being in the crowd and him telling you that on the day, by the way. I think I wasn't there at Crystal Palace that day, but I was there at home to Carlisle a few weeks later, and I'd just like to echo the words wonderfully there from the young lady from Hammersmith. It was appalling, and it is something that all of our fans have to live with, and we have to carry that shame. But Paul, being the battler that he is, he's also given me the go-ahead today to tell you that while he was lying in his hospital bed, and he was very, very, very ill those first couple of weeks, he was watching an interview with Antonio Rudiger, a new Chelsea player, who had some problems himself in Italy with racism, and it's one of the reasons he decided to leave Italy and to play in this country. Isn't that wonderful how things have changed somewhat for the better? But Paul was watching the interview, and then he was looking at Bakayoko, and he was looking at Kante, he was looking at all the players that the club were bringing in. And you know, Paul had an award-winning book talking about his trials and tribulations a while back called Black and Blue. And if you haven't read it, you should do, especially you younger guys. You should definitely read that book. It's a real experience to understand what he went through. So Paul's had an idea, but actually he now loves his work with Chelsea, where he works in hospitality on a match day. And he's come up with an idea which Rick Granville, are you here, Rick? Where's Rick? Because I know he called Rick up when he had the idea, and the idea is for a second book, only this book is called Black and Blue Legends. Jamaica, Desailly, Drogba. I was lucky enough to be in Munich that night. Hullet, still, sadly, but let's hope it will be repeated again soon. Chris, where are you? Only black manager to have lifted the FA Cup in 1997. So look, the leaps and bounds the club has made. So Paul has a new project. He's going to write a book called Black and Blue Legends. And he tells me Pat Nevin will be in it. So I think that's a real mark of endearment. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much. I hope you have a fantastic night on behalf of the Paul Canoville Foundation. Big round of applause for Mr. Canoville. He's out. That's great.
Thank you very much, Gary. So, ladies and gents, we will have a poem in a moment, but I feel it's that time where we need to. And I've seen some young footballers here, and I'm delighted with the coaches who have got some of those young men here and women here, because these people, and some of these people I'm about to announce, played football at a time when it was, we talk about like jerk, I think McDonald's are doing a jerk burger right now. Jerk burger in McDonald's, never in my lifetime. However, we're in flavour with seasoning. There was no Usain Bolt in those days. So in terms of global stars, there was Pele, who we all loved as an international footballer. The goal that Paul scored there against Fulham, because I was a friend of Paul's, I went to that game with Paul's cousin called Hudson Rogers, and they locked us in the ground. We were about 13, 14. We were locked in the ground for our own safety because of our own, I'm not a Chelsea fan, because of other Chelsea supporters' objections to us being at that game. I was at that game, and we were locked, two young kids. The police kept us behind for 25 minutes for our own safety, swear to God. That's how deep football went. So ladies and gents, I would like to introduce to you the panellists. I want to start with a personal hero, a great friend of mine. He's got some books here tonight. He's travelled all the way down from Merseyside. There's a big game tomorrow night between Liverpool and Manchester United. I'll explain more. But ladies and gents, to play for the most powerful club in the world at the time and in Europe, to play in a European Cup semi-final, he is the one and only. Will you please make some noise for Sir Howard Gale? A football Goliath, recently taken up a position at Brighton and Hove Albion. How often can you say, I played for my country and then I managed them? How many can say that? Cruyff didn't do it. Beckenbauer did. Not many can say that. Ramsey did for a period of time. Oh, Southgate did. Anyway, the FA are here. Behave yourself, Jeff. Behave yourself. They won't support you next year. Ladies and gents, you saw a fantastic goal that she scored, doing magnificent for tackling gender equality and diversity issues. Make some noise for the one and only Hope Powell! Ladies and gents, our next guest, I make no apology for. In fact, when I get on the phone with him, I feel sorry for him because I never let him get off the phone. I met him many moons ago. He came up to me in a nightclub. I didn't recognize him. And when someone told me who it was, I needed a heart attack. And I said, what, Ricky Hill? No, not the Ricky Hill. And I said, yeah, Ricky Hill, the ballerina. I wonder why he was called that, because those in the game say Ricky Hill could go left or right, and you didn't know what he was going to do next. Ladies and gents, a black man who played for Luton Town, was the first of the modern era of the black players to play for Luton Town, has managed it in America as well. Will you put your hands on only? There's only one Ricky Hill! Ladies and gents, quite often I've spoke to a number of footballers. They happen to be good friends. When there was the incident at Chelsea Football Club with their former captain, we're going to steer away from certain politics. Players were being called up by their own particular clubs and told, do not comment, do not make a statement. You heard tonight from somebody, I know that not just Paul, but the football fraternity and those people of colour hold to heart. And an interview after he scored the winning goal in the game, Pat Nevin said, I don't want to talk about the game. I want to talk about the disgusting and unethical treatment that Paul Cannavale, my teammate, just received. At a time when people didn't talk and weren't allowed to, he was reprimanded, didn't care. Ladies and gents, he went to Everton after he left Chelsea. He knows a lot about sectarianism. He's a Scot. Make some noise. There's only one Pat Nevin! All right, Sue. All right, Sue. Sue, I hear the mayor's parlour is free. Ladies and gents, you heard him speak earlier. First black player to play in Italy. His career was ended by really what was a disgraceful tackle. And by today's terms, it's not even on YouTube now. That's how graphic it was. From playing for Charlton, to Luton, to Aston Villa, to Glasgow Celtic, an absolute giant. And as many would say, he talks openly and candidly about the game, how it was then and how it is now. Will you please put your hands together for His Royal Highness, Sir Paul Elliott! In the current field of modern day football, when do you hear, I've managed in the Premiership, I've been a technical director, I've coached an England squad, I've done an England coaching manual. When I sat on the phone and spoke to this gentleman and I heard about some of his accomplishments, all I said to him was, I remember you in the losing side for Brighton in the cup final. And he was like, oh, all right, Jeff, you might see me Friday. Ladies and gents, doing wonderful things in the game, still in the game, and has given opportunities to other men of colour in the game. a big statement in itself. Will you put your hands together for the one and only Sir Christopher Ramsey? Ladies and gents, local boy done good. Cyril Regis played at Hayes, as did Les Ferdinand, and as did this young man. He went from Hayes to Queen's Park Rangers, and from Queen's Park Rangers, he went to West Ham for £2 million. And when I say, I'll use my language, a proper street youth. When I used to be playing music in the clubs, I'd be thinking, hey, you got a game tomorrow? I love him like cooked food. When I'm doing my breakfast show, man will phone me up and beg me records, you know. Ingrained in the culture, steeped in the culture, an absolute giant, right foot or left foot. Please make some noise. There's only one, Andrew Impey! Ladies and gents, unfortunately, we've had a couple of apologies which we'll play. We've had a couple of apologies. John Barnes has been asked to go to India to be part of the coverage for Standard Charter for the Liverpool-Manchester United game. We only knew on late Thursday night, John was trying to, this is John Barnes, trying to get a flight to negotiate for Saturday morning, and India's 5 hours ahead. John, it's not Jamaica, John, trust me. But John wanted to be here. John was one of the first people, when he heard that Sir Howard Gale was doing the event. John, we did this 10 years ago. And John Barnes was here, Les Ferdinand was here. Didn't know Howard as well as I know him now. But when I told John what I was proposing to get the first black player from Liverpool and the first black player from Chelsea, he said, just tell Howard to call me. I'll be here. But unfortunately, John can't be here. And as you know, with the Premiership season, big games tomorrow. Unfortunately, local boy done good, played football against him when he was a goalkeeper when we were younger. Les Ferdinand can't be here either. So, it's a humble apology. But would you not agree that's a fantastic panel? So, ladies and gents, they've heard enough from me. When you want to speak, you just got to press the buzzer there. And then when you finish speaking, then let it go again. What I'm going to ask you all to do, and go down the line, especially for some of the young people here, briefly, like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. How did you get into football? What was your journey? Howard Gale, the first black player to play for Liverpool. Howard, how did you end up playing for a club that had no black players ever?
Yeah, sometimes I kind of like wonder myself, but I always used to watch Match of the Day on a Saturday night, and players like Clyde Best and Albert Johansson, they inspired me. And I always had this fear though, because I used to listen to some of the abuse that Clyde Best was getting from his own West Ham fans, and he was a great player. I used to look forward to watching Match of the Day, and I became a little bit of a West Ham supporter because of him, because he was a positive role model for me. But again, obviously Liverpool was my club, and I used to go to bed dreaming every night that one day that I'd be able to put on a red shirt and go out to Anfield. And one day it came true. At the age of 19, I was playing Sunday League football, and my manager knew one of the coaches at Liverpool, a guy called Johnny Benison, and he said that you've got to come and see this kid. He's tearing it up in the league. He's only 18, 19. He's playing against older men. So eventually, again, the coach said, "Oh well, bring him along." And back in the days at Melwood, they didn't have academies. It was a Tuesday and a Thursday, and that night Roy Evans, Bob Paisley, Ronnie Moran, Joe Fagan, Ruben Bennett, they were all there. And there was a stereotype that had circulated itself around black footballers, and I remember they used to have a game which was the probables versus the hopefuls, and I picked up a ball outside of my own boxing again, the one thing that I had was I was quick, but also I could also use both feet. And I picked up a ball outside my own boxing. I beat 5 or 6 players, and I've hit a shot, and it's hit the bar, and as it's come back out, I've volleyed it right in the top corner from outside the box. So as I turned round, I could see them all on the steps, nodding with a course of approval. Lo and behold, sod's law, 10 minutes later, boom, goes over on my ankle, and I had a bad ankle sprain, but I didn't signal, can I come off, can somebody replace me? I tried to carry on, and eventually Joe Fagan said, come off son, you've done enough tonight, and it kind of like snowballed from there.
Lovely. Howard Gale, thank you very, very, very much. Hope Powell, football, it's a man's game. What are you doing playing football? You on about? Ladies and gents, Hope Powell. Hope, your journey in, there's some young women here tonight who've come only specifically to hear what you have to say. Hope, far away, your journey into football.
Good evening, everybody. My journey into football. I remember as a kid watching Match of the Day, World Cups, a particular one was 76 World Cup. I played football on the streets with my brother. I was the only girl. At the time, I thought I was the only girl on the planet that played football. So very strange. My ambition was to be a professional footballer. And obviously at the time, I never ever witnessed any women's football on TV, but I knew it was something that I wanted to do. Fortunately, at the age of 11 at school, I found out that a girl played football for a team very close to me, Millwall Lionesses, at the time. I went along, got back very, very late. My mum told me, being a West Indian woman, what the hell are you doing? Football isn't for young women. She wasn't going to let me go. She said I couldn't go the following Sunday. Sorry, I couldn't go training. When I got back from training, I got home very late. They asked me to play the following Sunday. I sneaked out. I went anyway. Loved it to see so many girls playing football. It was amazing. It looked organised. There was proper kit. Girls had football boots. There was coaching. It was a bit surreal. And then it just went from there. I got picked on the Sunday, went, I think I scored, played the following Sunday. They wanted me to go into the senior women's team at a very young age. I didn't want to, but in the end I did. And then at the age of 16, I ended up playing for England, which would probably be unheard of today.
In your wildest dreams, very quickly, at 16, you play for your... Did you ever believe that you'd go on to manage the country you play for?
I knew at 11 I would play for England. I knew that much. Because I was better than most of the boys on my estate, so I thought I had a good chance. Managing England, no. I decided at the age of 17 to take my first coaching qualification because I recognised that if I wanted to be employed in the game, it would have to be through coaching, because at the time there wasn't professional women's football, but here today we're on a different level.
We've got loads of questions for you, don't worry about that.
Thank you.
It's called the ballerina. Left foot, right foot. Local man, local boy did good. Went to Luton, a whole crop. At one time, if I'm right, there were 6, when Luton named an 11 once, there were 6 black players and 5 white players in your time. And you were the first of the modern crop that went to play there. The modern, you press the button, Ricky. See,
well, I thought you was addressing. Sorry, good evening, everyone.
Ricky Hill. Ricky.
Yes.
I'll get to Andy Impey at the end. Coming from the ends, my brother.
Kind of.
Tell us about your journey, because you've also managed in America. We'll come on to that as well. How did you make it as get into the professional game?
Ironically, good evening, everyone again. The footage that you showed earlier on, the first clip that you started with, Albert Johannesson, the left winger, South African left winger from Leeds United.
65.
I can remember 1965, black and white TV, myself and my brother at home in Cricklewood, and I've looked at the screen, and something within me has subconsciously put myself in that person's kit. So I've asked my brother, what team's that? And he said, it's Leeds United. I said, okay, that's my team. So from that moment onwards, I've supported Leeds United. From the football perspective, I have always had the ambition to become a professional footballer for as long as I can remember. Starting from the schools football, those who know me from the Northwest area will probably remember some of the times how Boys Brigade, regular school under 19s when I was 13.
Constantine.
Schools, Leary Constantine, men's football. So I was always working at my craft. The difference from now as I see it to when I grew up was we had no coaches. We were our own coaches. I would look at the television, see Bobby Charlton, see Eusebio, see Pele, see Beckenbauer, Bobby Moore, and try to take pieces from each and every one of those players and arm myself with them. I'd go outside of my house and I'd practice against that wall non-stop. Left foot, right foot, head in the ball. I wanted to be the best armed and equipped that I could ever be.
I was agreeing with you.
So, irrespective of me realising at a time, none of my senior peers, I had a brother who was equally, if not better, talented than I was. Left-footed, played like Liam Brady, but was never invited to a professional club. And people before him, who I worshipped, were never invited to a professional club. I never really put myself in that situation where I thought, okay, it's not going to happen for me. I patiently learnt my craft, played as much as I could, gained a reputation, eventually got selected for Middlesex after Luton Town had seen me play out in Hertfordshire and invited me along for trials. Outside of that, I was just a community player. One of the instances I'll give you where, by how it goes in subjective, I went to my secondary school, John Kelly Boys, and the PE teacher said, all right, we're going to have a game to pick the school side. So they picked out the 5 Brent players at the top of the playground. The teacher stood with him, they threw a ball in, and they let everyone scramble around kicking it to see who was the players that could play for the side. So it was all, for me, it's always been about proving myself as being capable enough to go to the next level. I was lucky, I was one of the fortunate ones from our area who got an opportunity, and through the grace of God and the luck that I've had along the way, it's managed to work out.
All right, don't worry, Ricky, we've got loads of questions for you as well. Pat Nevin, we have something in common. University boys. You came down from Scotland. You know, I'm looking at the panel here, and this looks like a 100 metres race line with the one white guy in the middle as a marker.
Do you know what?
You, Pat Nevin, I have to say, when we were putting this together with Paul and spoke to other players, and Garth Crooks had to say a big hello, that I don't think you realise just how monumental it was what you said at a time when you just scored the winning goal and then said, I don't want to talk about the game. I want to talk about my own fans booing my own teammate. Your journey from university from Scotland down to England, Pat Nevin.
First of all, I was up on that screen earlier on. Did anybody understand a word that I said?
Well, we weren't going to use subtitles, Pat, but we thought too offensive. Councillor Fenimore wasn't going to have it, so we said, nah, we're not going to do that.
I didn't understand the word I said. So we're really struggling now. I'll try to speak slowly with my accent now. Well, I had a very unusual way into football. Because my dad had taught me how to play football as a kid. And I played football because I loved playing football. I quite liked winning, but in actual fact, it was the creativity. That was the joy for me, the pure creativity of it. I, at no point in my entire life, wanted to be a professional footballer. Never crossed my mind at any point. And I signed on for Celtic at 13, and still never considered the concept of playing football professionally, because all I wanted to do was do it as a love, as a passion, as something that was great fun. So eventually I ended up being part-time, doing a degree in Glasgow, and also playing for Clyde, just part-time. Chelsea came to buy me, And I said, no, not interested. I love playing football. I'm doing it because I love. I'm not doing it for money. So thank you, but no thanks. And I stayed on to do another year of my degree. It's a very, very odd way to come into it, I know. But my love of the game never diminished. When I eventually wavered and went down to Chelsea a year later, I made a promise to myself to do it for the love of it, for the joy of playing football. And I think it made me a better player for doing so. But something else important happened then. I went to do that degree and I was a student and I was given good values by my parents. But more importantly, when I went to become a student in Glasgow at the age of 17, I was on anti-Nazi League marches. My hero wasn't the latest number 7 for Celtic. My hero was Steve Biko. You know, not an unusual. It's the weirdest. So I had a very, very different background from most footballers. So when I went down to Chelsea and saw what you talked about there, I just couldn't contemplate it, that this could be even acceptable and even thought of as acceptable at any point. So the fact that I spoke up and have always done so about equality at the time, we know that was the case at the time, but from then on, from sexism, from homophobia, for whatever, I will always do so. I don't think that was me being brave. I think that was me just being the way I was brought up. And I'm kind of very lucky in that way that I had a different route into football. So it wasn't really me being different or special. It was me being given a good grounding.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Pat. Paul Elliott, described by many as ahead of your time. As a young man at Charlton, you were called a young Beckenbauer. You used to like to bring the ball out. Of course, the money move went to Luton, from Luton again, big money move to Aston Villa, Glasgow Celtic, and then obviously Chelsea, and then that horrific tackle that ended your career. Many say that they compare yourself to the likes of people like Terry Butcher. I'm not quite sure in what respect other than heading the ball, but in terms of your playing ability on the floor, Liverpool apparently were looking at you at one stage and you chose to go somewhere else in London. Paul, you played Charlton, Luton, Chelsea, Villa, in Scotland, in Italy. Your journey into football, sir?
First and foremost, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to every one of you. I think it's wonderful to host such a very prestigious event in a very open, frank and transparent way about the beautiful journey, because we've all got our different journeys, and I suppose that my journey, probably some of it was based on adversity, because I grew up from a very sporting family, 2 older brothers, fantastic athletes. My eldest brother, Jeff, was an outstanding footballer. And obviously, you know, you try to emulate him, and I was always the youngest one. And, you know, you have all the hand-downs, you know, I had everything when the boots from Co-op or the Winfields, they were beyond repair. You know, I had to put the paper in there and sort of cover it up. But what it done, it probably taught me about values. And I have to kind of pay tribute to my mother and father, because they're strong Jamaican people, and they gave us a grounding of humility, of respect, of decency, of maximising your opportunities. And I suppose for adversity, I think growing up as a young player, having been told that you wasn't good enough. I come through the conventional route, played for my local teams, my junior teams, and I suppose that, you know, when I went to my first very professional club, oddly enough, one of the very first pro clubs I went to was Luton Town for a trial. And strange enough, David Pleat was the manager then. And he told the chief scout, I actually remember scoring 3 goals on the day, and they didn't fancy me. And it's quite, for me, it was very rewarding, the fact that when I was sort of close to 19 years of age, when my career started at Charlton Athletic, I got an absolute fantastic move to Luton Town. And I remember thinking I was going to sign for Arsenal that day for some strange reason. And I was going to meet David Pleat, and he said to me, I've always admired you for years. So I reminded him, you didn't admire me when you rejected me when I was 14. So I think the message is, I know there's some young, we've got sort of our youth of today and the future. I went to, in fact, I remember having trials at Chelsea, you know, when I was 11 years of age. And again, they told me I wasn't good enough. So my point is, you know, out of adversity, it does breed character. And when people say you're not good enough, you have two concepts in your life. You can lie down, you can accept it and believe what they say, or you're actually going to say, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. And you must go out there and use that as a stimulant and as a catalyst to do everything you want today. So with our young aspiring talents there, the team there at the back, you know, you must strive for perfection. You must go to the stars, go to the moon, give everything and give your best in what you try and do. And I think that kind of mindset, that application of that mindset followed me through my career and moving to Luton. I mean, I have to say, I don't want to embarrass him because he's here, but he's a dear friend of mine and I've known him for the best part of 35 years. Ricky Hill, I have to say to you that in my generation, you know, he was the king.
Yeah,
no question about
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. Fourth black player to play for England. Absolutely.
I've known Ricky and his family, Sharon, Shona. You know, I've known him for many, many years, and I was just saying to Sharon that the day after I signed, well, it was about a week later, I signed for Luton, and we played 1-0 away at Nottingham Forest. And Ricky was outstanding. He scored the most amazing goal and was the man of the match. And I went to a proper party that night because his daughter Shona, you know, I think she was a baby then, and that's when Ricky introduced me to a proper blues party, you know. Yeah. So my point, hey.
I say it go.
And he taught me all I knew socially, I have to say. But seriously, you know, Ricky was the embodiment of, you know, at that time you were talking about Brian Robson. Ricky was Brian Robson and more. And, you know, he was him. You've got Brian Steen, his brother's here tonight, Mark. So my point was, you know, I had what I call fantastic role models to take me on to the next journey. And then my career just sort of went thereafter to Aston Villa. I was in Italy, you know, went to Scotland, went to with Celtic and obviously Chelsea, where I suppose my proudest moment was, you know, I was aware of Paul Canaville becoming the first black player and understanding, you know, the adversity because I had it in a different way when I became Chelsea's black captain. So there was a different type of pressure. And bearing in mind those that know, Pat will know now, having from, you know, played at Glasgow Celtic and been a prominent player there to go and sign for Chelsea, the alignment between the two sets of supporters in terms of the bigotry, I thought I left the cauldron, but I went back into the cauldron. So, but listen, at the end of the day, I have to say, I would never, ever, notwithstanding the changes, the demographics of the game, I was extremely fortunate, extremely privileged and humbled to have said I've been a professional footballer and try and make a positive contribution of what I've achieved.
Thank you very much, Chris Ramsey, my abiding memory. 1983, Man United played Brighton, FA Cup. A certain bloke they told to go and play left back because the right back got injured. I think it was Steve Gattin. Something happened in the final and then I thought, well, who is this guy? Then your journey into football from the lower leagues to Queen's Park Rangers. You were at Tottenham for a period of time. We always see you on the side with Les. And then, bam, Queen's Park Rangers. Bam, black manager of a local club. Bam, technical director of a local club. Bam, in the Premiership, in the Championship, coached at an international level and have done some for Football Association coaching manuals. Chris Ramsey. How did you get into football? Chris Ramsey.
First of all, it's an honour to be invited to something like this. Never thought I'd ever be sat here at this time of my career. My football career, very modest. I'd have to thank my sisters for providing the Barbie doll heads that me and my brother used to kick around the garden. That helps with my brother was a great opponent and helped me to play. But I was basically in the time when your parents didn't really want you to play football because it wasn't what it is now, and education was the way they wanted you to go. But my mum fought for me really to get away from my dad, who tried to keep me from playing. I started off at Charlton as a schoolboy, got released from there. Well, I started at Arsenal, got released from there. Went to Charlton, got released from there. And I ended up going to Bristol City, got released from there.
Prison? Released from there?
Got released. So what's going on? I wasn't as actually. I was not the ballerina and gifted in the way that Ricky was. I was at the time when they thought black players didn't want it up them, so I had to prove them wrong, which led to 10 red cards in my career. But you know, I was very fortunate to have played in all the divisions and had some relative success. I ended up going to Malta and playing over there for 3 years, and I finished off actually playing with Ricky at Cocoa Beach in America, which sort of helped me along the way to my coaching career, really. Both me and Ricky was in charge, I was his assistant, and we'd put ourselves on when we were winning 3-0. So, yeah. But, so basically started off there in Florida, Malta and Florida. When I came back to England after that, went to university and took up a role at Orient as the youth development officer for 3 years. While I was at uni, and then got headhunted by the FA, went there, was the first black director of football, regional director.
Wow.
100 years.
Not a lot of people didn't know that at all. Wow. First.
But then I met the real juggernaut of football, Hope Powell. So myself and Hope were the only two black people sitting on a table like this. Back in the 90s, you know, I was Howard Wilkinson's assistant then, and I would just have to say that Hope's underappreciated for what she's done. Because
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I sat there as a black male, intimidated, not showing it, but intimidated with the way things were then, and for what I didn't really actually appreciate what she was going through at the time. Trying to revolutionise the game, the women's game, as she has done. So, fortunately for me, there were some opportunities at the FA. You know, I became a tutor of the full licence. Colin King was on my badge at that time there, and I ended up then becoming the first black male manager of a football team in this country, which was a first at that time. And then I moved on from there. Went to America, became a national champion out there. Came back, went to Tottenham as assistant academy director. Helped to produce quite a few players there in the coaching. Ended up working with the first team there for a short period. And then
wasn't there a young Harry Kane in your charge when you were?
Yeah, there was a few players. There's a few.
Okay.
Few
just checking.
There.
I've heard of him somewhere. I've heard his name.
That's good. But fortunately for me, when I left QPR, I went to left Tottenham. I went to QPR with Les. Les was the director of football. I was head of coaching at the time, head of player development at the time, and Harry decided to take a step down, and Les gave me the opportunity to take the team for a short period. The players liked the training, and they asked the owner if I could be the manager. So I've been very fortunate to have two major leg ups at good times. So working with Ricky at Cocoa Beach, really, I learnt a lot. Probably nicked all these sessions, but
was he on time, Rick? Because Chris is notorious for being late. Was he? He's more professional than you were. Okay. Oh.
But and then obviously I've been fortunate enough that Les has been been there in a strategic time for me. That's helped me to be on the map and also help other people at our club, because we do have a great diversity at our club. You know, we've got Paul Hall, Andy Impey sitting next to me. We've got Manisha Taylor training with our players. The whole club is quite a diverse club, and you know, I'm happy.
Isn't it owned by a black guy?
Pardon?
Isn't it owned by a black guy, QPR?
It's owned by Tony Fernandes.
Yeah.
Is the chairman. So you know, at all stages, I've been very, very fortunate to be involved with people that have pushed me at the right time, and I've been able to take my turn as it came.
Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Ramsey. Just to say to you all, after I've asked them a few questions, we are going to break. And what we decided not to do, spoke with all the panellists, within reason, we're going to let the microphones go into the audience when you can ask questions of the panel, unabridged. But obviously there are one or two issues that if you're going to overstep the mark, I'm not going to expect the panel to answer those questions. So I'm not interested in where they live, their national insurance number, their bank details. Andrew Impey, local boy, done good. I hate you. In an era before mobile phones and text messages were doing the rounds, the day I heard you sign for West Ham for $2 million, you remember, I sent you a message saying, what a waste of money. Great friend, always enjoy coming down to the old Upton Park to see both yourself and Trevor Sinclair. Now you made it big time, you don't really keep in touch with your brethren anymore, but I'm not bitter. Ladies and gents, please make some noise for Andrew Impey. Andy, how? Local man like you, when you were supposed to be getting ready for a game, would be in a club, or when you weren't supposed to be, how'd you get into football, sir?
Good evening. Let me just say, first of all, I was never in the club the night before the game.
No, he wasn't.
Right?
No,
Okay.
no. Never at Cork,
Just so you
Norwich.
know.
Never, ever, ever.
Just so you know, yeah? In answer to your question, there's probably two things. I didn't get into football. Football got into me. Yeah? I mean, I'm not sure if there's any, there probably is, but if anybody in this place has grown up in Ladbroke Grove, knows about Ladbroke Grove, you know that playing in the walkways, playing over the parks, in and around Ladbroke Grove, football gets into you. You haven't got a choice of, oh, I want to play cricket, or I want to, no. Your big brother or your younger brother, whatever, they're dragging you over the park, you're playing football. So, also, obviously, with QPR, in and around the area, you haven't got a choice. You're playing football. That's it. Coming from like I say, coming from Ladbroke Grove, you're playing football. But for myself, it was, I'd say the biggest thing is luck for me, because as you said, obviously all these lot on here, just so you know, they're all a lot older than me. I'm a baby to all this lot, right? Just so you know. No, but it was, you know, as I was growing up, I went on trial at Chelsea. Chelsea wanted to sign me. What was I doing when I was supposed to go training? Meeting the man them on the bus, going to look for girls. Not gonna lie.
So you're a gallus. That's guys who like girls, by the way.
So you know, my early career was quite up and down, because I was supposed to be going to, like I say, training at Chelsea, training at Watford, training at Tottenham, training here, training at Reading, all over the place. And it basically, when you talk about dedication, I didn't have it. That's why I say the luck is the major part. You know, I was supposed to be going training after school. I couldn't be bothered. Not gonna lie, I couldn't be bothered. It was like school was hard enough as it was, and then to traipse over to wherever, I'm not bothered. I'm going with the lads. I'm going to see whatever everybody else is up to. Then Chelsea, I mean, good on them. They used to say, what we'll do, we'll come and pick you up from school. So there was like an entrance at school, and they said, yeah, well, what we'll do, we'll send the car, pick you up, and then they take you to training, and after training, it will take you back home. All right, no problem. What I'll do, I'll go out the other exit. So I went across the field.
Shocking.
But basically, the long story of it is, I ended up at Wimbledon as an apprentice. Yeah. And what had happened was, obviously, everyone who knows, the footballer's holiday is different from school holidays. Footballers, you know, they're sort of May, June. We're back in training in July. School holidays is obviously July, August. So I'd with my family, I booked a holiday to Jamaica. So before I signed for Wimbledon, I said, I booked a holiday to Jamaica. Can I go? Yeah, no problem, you can go. Cool. 2 weeks into pre-season, my first pre-season. So I said to the manager, right, you know, next week I'm going to Jamaica, so I'll see you in a few weeks. the man said to me, "You're not going." So I said, "What?" He said, "You're not going." I said, "What are you talking about? You're a footballer now, you've got to blah, blah." I went, "No, but you said, before I signed, you said I could go to Jamaica. Well, I'm telling you now, you can't go." So straight away from then, me being me, I went, "Yeah, all right, cool." So at the time, it was Bobby Gould was the manager. So I went up to his office and he's saying to me, "I've heard that you want to go to Jamaica. Do you think you're a fucking movie star or are you a football player?"
What?
So I said, "Nah, I'm not, but you promised me that I could go to Jamaica. I'd already booked it. I asked the question, you said I could go." So anyway, he was toing and throwing, and he was telling me he was going to run me and make me run until I'm sick, and then he's going to pick me up and make me run again and all this type of thing. I said, all right. I said, "Listen, there's no point in us keep having this argument. You're going to say I'm not going. I'm telling you I'm going." So argument done. Anyway, I went downstairs. My youth team manager come down and said, "We've had a meeting upstairs." So I was a little bit, anyone that knows me, a little bit kind of quick like that. Bit trappy, I think is the word that I'm trying to get out. So the youth team manager come down and he said, "We've had a meeting upstairs and we've decided that you're allowed to go, and then when you come back, we'll make a fresh start." I said to him, I was going anyway. Don't matter what you said, I was going anyway. So what happened was, when I went away and I'm thinking to myself, these people have lied to me. I don't respect them. Right? I've got no respect for them. So, because I don't respect them, I don't think I'm going to learn from them. So it's better that I just give my place. So at the time, I was an apprentice, just starting off my scholarship. Give my place up. Let somebody else who will probably appreciate it more and will learn and hopefully get a career in football, give it to them, because I'm not going to learn from them. I'm going to waste their time and I'm wasting my time. So I said, no, I don't want to stay. So I said to my mum, I'm not staying there. I don't like these people. They've lied to me. If they're going to lie to me over a holiday, what they're going to be like when I'm going through my career. So I said, no, I'm leaving. So my mum's obviously started cussing. You take this thing from, you think say that? But she started giving me some. Basically
in Patois, yeah?
Right. She's basically said to me, "You're giving up the opportunity of a lifetime." So I said, which is fair enough, but I don't respect these people. They lied to me, so I'm not going to learn. And I've got faith in my ability that I will make it somewhere. So if I don't make it as a footballer, I will make it as a window fitter, I will make it as a bricklayer, whatever. It doesn't bother me, I will make it. What happened was I left, didn't do nothing, went and got a job as a window fitter, double glazing. Best job I've ever had. Never, I mean, when we was an AP, we was on £28.50 a week. When I went and was a window fitter, £76.25. I was a millionaire. In my house, I was a millionaire. So, what happened was, didn't do nothing, then I went and played for Yeading. Our old under-18s team, we was all like together, and they was the reserves at Yeading. So I went and played for them, just playing for fun, no money, started doing okay. Gordon Bartlett, who was the manager of the first team, he wanted me to go into the first team, but I didn't know anyone in the first team. All my mates were in the reserves. So I said, nah, man, cool, you're cool, I'm blessed. I'll stay here with this lot, we'll have a laugh. Anyway, eventually got into the first team, and within probably, 2-3 months, the club started looking. Have you seen this kid that plays for Anyway, QPR come, Millwall come, Southampton come, Chelsea come again, Reading come.
You didn't have agents at that time, so how did you know all these? Are you making this up? Or you?
No. What it was.
I did. So we'll move on, Andy. So what was the definitive? How did you end up signing for Queen's Park Rangers?
Well, so obviously all these clubs were watching and saying, "Yep, he's got bits and blah blah blah." But QPR were the first team to actually say, "What we want to do is bring him in for a week's trial, playing a game, because we like what we see." And luckily for me, I went in there. I mean, I was crap in the game that we actually played. I was crap, but they saw something that they liked, and unfortunately for me, they signed me.
All right, wicked. Andy Impey, thank you very much. Okay, the early part of the session is to talk about how football was back then. How would Gayle? First black player to play for Liverpool. That means first and only, well, at the time, only black face in the dressing room. Andy, when you joined QPR, were there any other black faces in the dressing room? Can you push the on button?
What's that, sorry? Play again.
When you were at QPR, when you joined QPR, were there other black players in the dressing room?
Yeah.
Okay. At your time, Paul, you were at Charlton, and you were at Luton. Well, Luton speaks for itself. Other black players?
Where? Sorry,
When you were at Charlton as a youngster, before you went Luton, we know Luton was United.
I was then at that juncture. Yes, the only
at Charlton black players.
Because I got into the first team when I was 16, so literally was still at school and very lucky to get the opportunity. But going to Luton, I felt very comforted in the dressing room when there was Ricky Hill, Brian Steen, Mark Steen, Ray Daniel, Mitchell Thomas, Erica Najobi. So that's when I understood about diversity.
That Luton team's the reason why I voted for Brexit. Okay. Howard Bell, I'll come to you, Ricky. What was it like? You made reference in your autobiography that a well-known Liverpool player, he actually scored in the European Cup final, had made some remarks that you just couldn't take it anymore. What was it like to be the black face that walked in at the time with the most successful club in Europe?
Well, Liverpool were just about to be the juggernaut that they were in the late 70s and early 80s, and again, a lot of the banter that went on in the changing rooms, I was supposed to accept it, but I've been brought up in a predominantly white area of Liverpool, an area called Norris Green that was synonymous with the murder of Rhys Jones a few years ago, and there was two gangs, the Strand Gang and the other gang was called the Crocky Gang, who one of their members actually killed Rhys Jones, and I was an original member of the Strand Gang, and again, you were one of them or you became a victim. And there were things that went on throughout school. Again, when I went to a junior school, they used to have a little green across the road from the school, and there was a fight most nights of the week when I first went there. My sister Janice, again, she went there as well, and she was in a different part, and most nights again I was top of the bill, and it was fight the nigger, who's going to fight the coon, and I was fighting boys, girls, lads who were older than me, lads who were younger than me. Again, I laugh about it now, but I think that some of the top fighting promoters went to my school, St. Teresa's, and my brothers started noticing that there was something wrong in my demeanour and my body language, and one day again, I used to go home with my clothes all torn and dishevelled because I was fighting, and because I was always playing football, I'd pass it off to my mum that, we just had a game, and that's right, my clothes were torn. So one day my brother got hold of me and he said to me, what's going on? And I said, nothing. He said, I know there's something going on. So I just said to him, well, I think I'm getting bullied in school. So my brother said to me, who's doing it? I said, well, the whole school. So my brother said to me, you've got to make a statement. So naive me thinking, I'm not going to stand up there and start talking to these kids about this, that, and the other. He said, no, you've got to make a statement, and you've got to, again, for want of a phrase, he said, you've got to do one of them in. So I said, no, I can't do that, and I let it go. A few weeks later, we were at a games lesson, and we used to have to go off site to do games, and there was a kid, a white kid again, his name was McMahon, and he got hold of me one day, and he looked in my face and called me a nigger, a coon. So I pushed him over and I sat on his chest, put his arms to one side, and I just butted him for what seemed to be like 10 minutes. And when I got up and I looked at his face, I thought, okay, now I've killed him. So, vroom, I'm home now. Never mind school, never mind games. And I'm thinking, the police are going to be at our house just now. So again, vroom, past me mum. What are you doing home from school? We've been let out early because there's been a flood. So again, my mum wasn't having that. My mum used to work nights. She worked as an auxiliary nurse in a mentally handicapped home. And the next morning, she came home from work and she went, I'm going to school with you. So again, as I say, I've crapped myself. So on our way to school, we passed one of the other parents and she stopped my mum and she said, do you know your son's been fighting virtually every night on that field over there? So my mum's just looked at me with a frown. But I think my mum kind of like knew what was going on. So anyway, when we get up to school, the boy who had done this to, and again when I seen his face, it was horrific. His eyes were like frogs' eyes and his nose was a mess. But to be fair to him, his mother's quizzed him and said to him, how come you've got this? And he said, I've called our Gail this, and everybody in the school had been calling it. So I thought that it was all right for me, but he just called it to me at the wrong time. And as it happened again, the head put a message out throughout the school, and he told anybody that again who turned out he was going to bully me, that they were going to...
That experience and of that level of prejudice, when you actually, so the question was, we'll move to Ricky.
Yeah.
When you actually were the only black face in the Liverpool dressing room, for you, were you absolutely conscious of the fact that I'm in an all-white world?
Well, it's the same thing again, and I always say that things that happen to you when you're growing up kind of like shape the person who you are. And the same thing happened to me when I went into Liverpool. There was a certain player, and this player was like my idol. I'd grown up watching him. I followed Liverpool all over the place, and this player again thought that he could take umbrage on me, and he started affecting my life. And the same sort of scenario happened where, as my brother said to me, what's happening? And I said, listen, I'm packing it in here. I'm not going in there no more. And he said, why? And I told him, and the same thing again, make a statement. And this time again, I knew what they meant. So one November morning, this same player started taking off on me. So I just walked over to him and just said to him that there's going to be one night in the future where you're going to go to the toilet, and when you go to the toilet in your house, I'll be in there waiting for you.
The funny thing is...
And the training ground went silent, and...
Not surprised because of who it was.
Yeah,
Everyone's been scared.
As I walked past Graham Souness, he's nudged me in the ear and he went, well in there, lad, I fucking hate that cunt.
Ricky, I'm going to be brief now. Rick, turn it off.
Sorry.
Are we? Ricky, you were the first of that generation of ballers that really paved the way. You've heard what's been said by Paul. When you arrive at Luton, I mean, it's not too far from London, 25, 30 minutes, North Circular Road. How did you feel when you became the first one of the modern crop of players in an all-white dressing room?
Well, firstly, coming from where we came from in North West London, I didn't even know where Luton was originally. We never left that area apart from going probably to South London to see my auntie. So I didn't know what was going on north of Watford for sure. But in respects of my grounding before getting into professional football was such whereby I was totally unfazed by anything that I was going to see and meet in my journey. My parents, growing up in Jamaica and then coming here in the mid-50s, they instilled a lot of self-discipline, a lot of motivation, a lot of drive, as everyone said previously about education being important.
Right.
I was always comfortable, regardless of who I was with, their denomination, their colour of their skin, their culture. It was nothing that was never brought up in our house that we were different. So going through school, going through Boys Brigade, going through the general schooling football circuit and otherwise.
But did you feel you were different when you actually were in the dressing room at Luton? There's no one else in the dressing room that looks like you.
Yeah, so I walked in the dressing room, there's no one looks like me. It wasn't uncommon because there wasn't a great number of us at that time going through the schooling system. So Godfrey Ingram was before me playing for the schoolboys. Fantastic. He wasn't at the club at the time, but I'd seen him play for England. I'd seen him associated with Luton. But I walked in the dressing room and I was there to play football. I was there to do something that I love, that I'm passionate about, and anything else outside of that, to me, was kind of nondescript.
Didn't matter to you?
Not in terms of my teammates. Eventually, when I got to, after 5 months as a first-year apprentice, I got selected for the first team. Just by chance, one day the manager walked past and he said, "You're with us today." I said, "Oh, really?" Because I was kind of, in my estimation, 56th in line at that time, because there was 40 senior pros, 12 second-year pros. So to be involved in the first 12 was incredible. So everyone kind of looked around. I walked into the dressing room and all eyes turned on me, and all of a sudden, the spotlight was on. But again, it was an opportunity. I went out, I got on, I managed to score a goal, managed to make a goal within 22 minutes, and the crowd accepted me. And from there, the next week was the eye-opener. I went up to Burnley. Burnley in the mid-70s, maybe even now, maybe not the most pleasant place.
I see Howard shaking his head, Paul Elliott shaking his head.
Think about London's greatest day and double it, and then you've got Burnley. So I've walked out and I've gone to do my warm-up, and on the side of the pitch, which is their main stand, which holds about 3,000, the whole crowd was singing "How Much Is That" in the window. He's blacker than you and me, it's right.
Wow.
So I was doing the warm-up still, you can hear it. I've looked at my fellow teammates. They've got this sadness look on their face, like an empathy with a helpless look, not knowing how they can help you. I kind of just put that in the back of my mind, but I can still see their faces now. They were shocked and disappointed that I was having to take this kind of abuse. Anyway, as it would happen, came out for the game, ended up scoring the winning goal, just put my hand up, walked back to the centre circle.
Absolutely. Could I say, thank you, Ricky. Hope. When people talk about disadvantage and discrimination, I mean, the female game, until really you, I talk about myself and my own sexism as a man, until I encountered yourself on television. I know Channel 4 sometimes used to show women's football on a weekend. A friend of mine, Yvonne, scored a goal in the cup final one year, a winning goal. Didn't know much about football, didn't think it was possible that a black woman could be managing the country she played for. What was the women's game like at 16? And then by the time you became the England manager, what was it like to play? Did you experience chance on the terraces? Different climate, different game?
I think back then, fortunately, the women's game didn't suffer from discrimination. I can honestly say that. I think in terms of spectators, there were very few, so we didn't have to deal with that. In the dressing room, there were other black players that I played with, so it wasn't that, I didn't see any discrimination from a playing point of view. In terms of playing, back then we had to, like, I guess most amateur clubs at that time had to pay subs and pay your own way, pay petrol to get to the ground, wash your own kit, and do all of those sort of things. I think one thing back then was in terms of opportunities, even back then for female coaches, there weren't that many, if any at all, that ran the female side of the game in terms of management. And I think even today, in terms of equality, there are very few female managers managing at the highest game today, which is really disappointing. And the game has shifted from amateur status to professional status. In terms of players, But in terms of...
Would you be someone who would be an advocate of the Rooney Law or the Rooney Rule? For those who don't know, it's nothing to do with Wayne Rooney, the footballer. It's to do with increasing quotas of diversity, and in particular BME or BAME representation in senior positions in football.
Yeah, I think so. I think certainly where it comes to gender equality in the women's game, there are far more male coaches coaching women's football than there are female coaches coaching in the women's game. So I think certainly in women's football it isn't about race, there's no racial connotation to it. It's more about gender equality. Right. First and foremost, we have to tackle the fact that there are a very few female coaches at the forefront of the women's game, let alone colour. Colour is the second issue. It's the gender equality first, in my opinion. And I think there are enough females that are qualified A-licensed coaches, pro-licensed coaches to lead and be at the forefront of coaching in England. And sadly, there aren't opportunities for them to ply their trade, which is really sad. I find that very disappointing.
Okay, so a lot to do still. A tremendous amount for us to do still.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ricky, feel free.
Just sorry to interject on the line. Just in regards to the Rooney Rule, how many people in the room, by show of hands, know exactly what the rule entails? Okay, so probably just over half. So just to explain a little about the Rooney Rule, because there's been a lot of misconceptions being said about it in respect to its tokenism, and it's just you throwing the race card in, looking for jobs even though you're not really qualified in terms of to get that overall. The Rooney Rule, the inception of it was in 2002, and it was created because there was 70% of black minority African American players playing NFL football. But when it was off the field, there was very, very few that aspired to become head coaches. There was issues with the hiring practices within the American system. So what happened was Johnny Cochran, the late Johnny Cochran of OJ fame, and also Cyrus Myrie, put a report out. And a report was given to the Paul Gabalou for the commissioner of the NFL. And it stated that black coaches were held accountable to a higher standard than white counterparts when going for head coaching positions. Their standards had to be that much higher, and it was unfair. The commissioner, within a month, spoke to Dan Rooney and created a diversity committee. 1 month. Right. 2 months later, that diversity committee came up with a diversity plan. And it was suggested to Johnny Cochran, who had then joined a group called the Fitz-Pollard Alliance. You can look at all this online. And they stated that any head coaching position that became available, one minority coach that was able, capable, qualified, they don't have the same qualification, legislation restrictions that we have here, would be interviewed. There's no promise of a job, there's no promise of future jobs. It's an opportunity to sit in front of people that make decisions, people that hire and fire, and sell your philosophy, your idea, your dream. And that's all it was. In 2003, so it's 1 year after the Rooney Rule was created, I was in Trinidad coaching. And I saw ESPN and I saw what's this Rooney Rule thing come up? And I looked and I thought, how wonderful that would be if we had something like that in our country, whereby minority candidates who have had difficulty infiltrating the system after their playing careers have been over were given the opportunity to go in and address those that made it. So I researched it, went to America, went to the NFL lawyers, Belinda Lerner, Mike Haynes, the Fitz-Pollard Alliance, and I brought back all the information and handed it to the League of Managers Association. At the time, John Barmer was there. He didn't take it any further. I took it to the PFA, the Premier League, and all the other cohorts in 2005. Last year, a voluntary recruitment code was put into place. The voluntary part is the issue I have. because only 10 teams out of 92 teams have joined to sign up to enable one minority candidate to be interviewed if there is a vacancy there. So it's a paper tiger as far as I'm concerned. The issue that I have, as I said, Jeff, was that it took the NFL 3 months in order to recognise there's an issue, recognise that we have done wrong, and put something in place that will try to help erase that issue.
The difference is surely with America, they've got a Bill of Rights, so then with the Constitution you're able to challenge, you're allowed to say, over here all we've got is a Magna Carta, if that at all. And it's far more different. Because I'll tell you why I say this, I'll put this to the audience. I own a football club. I invest my own money in it. Who the hell are you, black, white, red or yellow, to tell me who I should employ? Jose Mourinho, one of the most successful managers of all time, his words recently were, the best man gets the job.
I understand, and I'm all for the best man to get the job.
Why are you complaining?
I'm all for the best man to get the job. The problem is, potentially, due to the colour of one's skin, that best man is not getting into the job to even pitch for the job. That is my argument.
Okay, I'm arguing, I'm not going to fight you there.
That is my argument.
Paul Elliott, you want to say, let's see your finger up. And then I'll come back to the troublemaker Pat Nevin in a moment. Go on, Paul, what did you want to say? Feel free to pitch you whenever you want.
I just personally want to echo everything that Ricky has said. I mean, the reality is, if you look at the modern day game now, there have been so many owners who've been extremely good businessmen, who've made a substantial amount of money and has bought football clubs. But how many, what happens is, the same attributes and qualities they use to make their money, that same narrow-mindedness and their ego, once they buy a football club, they lose the fortune very quickly. And one of the biggest issues is called the lack of diversity. The decision-making process, when you have one man like that, and a lot of football is run by people like that, they don't understand not just the social and the human values of having a diverse board and different opinions. There's actually an economic upside to diversity. And that's where the game's gone totally and utterly wrong. So that's why Ricky's point is, and a very, very important point, that there's nothing better, the decision-making process is reflective of society and communities. And they have to start understanding that, because so many clubs, I can give you half a dozen clubs that are kind of gone to the wall, going to the wall, been terribly unsuccessful, using that same narrow-mindedness that you've just referred to. It's their money, and they can say, we can do what we want with it. Yeah. Anybody with that kind of mindset is not going to be successful. And so ultimately, all what myself, Ricky Hill, everybody on this table that's got involved in our socialist area, we wanted one thing: equality of opportunity, meritocracy, and transparency, full and total transparency of recruitment processes. But unfortunately, a lot of football now, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
But surely football, okay, fair enough, but surely football is, I've got a friend who's got a friend, Les Ferdinand's mate is Chris Ramsey. I'm going to leave Tottenham to go to QPR. Friends take friends with them. Don't
with
they?
respect, Jeff, I know you're being rather mischievous here. All I'm going to say to you is, he works at QPR.
Right.
He happens to be Les' friend. But more importantly, A, he's qualified.
2, he's talented. 3.
Number 1. B, there was a proper, open, transparent recruitment processes. And the same with Andy as well. So my point is, it just happens to be that they're black, but the most important thing they are the best person for the job because they've got the requisite qualifications and they've been given opportunities.
Like this opal, but people would say, look, Chris Ramsey is a giant of the game. It's not a hidden secret. There are people here tonight who probably weren't aware of Chris's CV. Chris, do you feel you owe anybody black anything? You're a senior coach, qualified. Are you a senior black coach, or are you a coach who happens to be black? What are you, Chris? How would you describe yourself?
To me, I'm a coach that happens to be black. Yep. To the public, I'm a black coach.
Right.
So, obviously, when you do your interviews before the games and stuff like that, I mean, it's one of the main issues that people talk about. But I just see myself as a coach. But I realise that to get to where I needed to get to, I probably had to do twice as much as the people that were doing the same job as me. And to get to anywhere, I've probably had to be more qualified than them in other areas of the game, which has allowed me to now to move in and out of boardrooms as well as sports science, as well as coaching. So for me, being more rounded than everybody else is great for me, but not fair for the community.
In your role, Chris, you are very senior. What are the equivalents in the Championship or the Premiership? How many black technical directors are there that you know of, that you bump into?
There's none.
None.
Only me.
None?
No.
Wow.
Or academy directors and that as well.
All academy directors? None. Turn your mic off, please. Chris, turn your mic off, Chris.
I think you'd have to understand that there's a pecking order here, and like when you look at the makeup of the Premier League with managers and coaches, I think there's only 2 who are from the UK. The rest of them are all foreign coaches. Hope's just made the point there before now, is that what's happening is that a lot of the male coaches now are drifting into the women's game. So the women's, prominent women coaches, they're not getting the same opportunities. So being black, you're at the bottom of the list. We had this stigmatism as players growing up of who we were. But again, when you look at some of the top players who've frequented the Premier League and the English League, again, the names just roll off the tongue.
But there are those, Howard, who would say the game's improved from when Pat Nevin, I'm going to come to you now, Pat, from the time when you made your comments about Paul Rudd. You've had a black manager, you've had a black captain, you've had black coaches. Howie, let's just let Pat respond. You respond, Howie. You respond. But they say John Barnes went to Celtic, didn't happen. Leroy Rosinha was at Brentford, didn't happen. Are you saying that black players are
No,
black?
what I'm saying to you is that John Barnes, Leroy Rosinha became managers of respective clubs, were sacked for failure. But being a white coach, if you watch again around the UK, is that you can go and get the same. Football is the only industry where you can be sacked for failure and go and get a job at the same level or at a higher level if you're white. That's not the same for black coaches.
Pat Nevin, you've been around black dressing rooms. Everton's all white when you played for them. But Hullet?
A couple of things that I wanted to mention. The meritocracy is really important. Within the actual playing of football now, and it wasn't always the case in the past, you've kind of got a meritocracy. You know, if you're a good enough player, you'll get there. Now, didn't used to be the case. I think you used to have to be better if you were black to get a game in the top teams, but they're businesses now, so that doesn't happen. This meritocracy and this equality we're looking for, and the great argument that Ricky makes about the Rooney Law, this is about the control and the running of the game. And that's a totally different thing, because you've got subjectivity in the decision-making process, and that's where it becomes difficult to prove that there is a bias there. But boy, does the numbers not tell you there's a bias there. So we actually all know it is there, so there's no argument about it at all. But try and keep those two things apart. Just one little thing, I feel slightly, we just mentioned in there the fact that obviously I've not had any bigotry aimed towards me. I'm going to hold that thought for a wee second, right? Being called a manky Scotch git most of the time when I was at Chelsea. But more specifically, when I was growing up in Scotland, we didn't have the racism. We had the sectarianism. Quite bad, isn't it, Paul? It's vicious. Now, one of the things that happened to me as a kid,
Can we just elaborate for the audience who may not understand the great big Glasgow divide? Can we just elaborate of sectarianism to them?
I was going to explain what it is one half of, sorry to some of you who may know, but one half of Glasgow is Catholic and supports Celtic, and one half of Glasgow is Protestant and supports Rangers. Now, the hatred between those groups in history was as bad as any hatred you will see in any sectarian or racial divide. It was vile. Now, in actual fact, I don't need to give anybody in here a history lesson, but it wasn't that long ago where if you walked in there'll be a sign outside a pub, and it would say, no dogs, no blacks, no Irish. Now, Patrick Kevin Francis Michael here is a wee bit Irish in his background, right? So we grew up with that in our hearts, and it's part of the reason why I've always fought the fight along with everyone else, because in our hearts, it's actually been there. And I'll give you a little quick story about that. I had stopped playing for a while just after I left Celtic, and I was starting my degree. And at the end of a bounce game with a boys' club, I walked away. Now, Glasgow Rangers at that time, in 100 years, had never once signed a Catholic player. That's bigotry. That's racial apartheid. That's how bad it was in Scotland, and that's what we were dealing with. As I walked off the field, I saw the Rangers scout walking towards me, and I'm thinking, oh my God, don't embarrass yourself, mate. And he walked up and he said, hello, my name is, I'd scored 4 goals and we'd won the game. And he told me his name. And I said, oh, hello, my name is Patrick Kevin Francis Michael Nevin. Bye. And just walked off. Because there was no way I could have been Diego Maradona. I could have been Lionel Messi. I could be both of them combined. I wasn't signing for his team. So the bigotry was there. The sectarianism was there. Within the actual playing, it's kind of, I'm not fully, but it's gone much more than it had before. We have a meritocracy, but it isn't elsewhere.
Okay, thanks very much, Pat. Before I come to you, Andy, I'm going to come to you. Before that, Hope, do you think in your lifetime, when I was a student, if anybody had ever told me that there would be a black president of the United States, I'd have given them my right arm. Do you think in your lifetime we will ever have a woman managing in the Premiership? In your heart of hearts, knowing the game. I don't mean the television programme, The Manager. I'm talking about, do you think in your lifetime it's Hope out? Sure, or maybe are you as close as it possibly can get?
There aren't enough female managers in the women's game, let alone coaching in the men's game. In the Premiership, in my lifetime, probably not. I don't believe there will be, not in my lifetime. I don't think it's anything to do with not being qualified or not good enough to manage people. I think there aren't enough jobs in football for the amount of coaches anyway. So there's a long list before, there is an equal representation in terms of colour. So women, I'm black and female, so I'm way, way down.
Do you feel sometimes, Hope, that people may look at you and think, well, how did she get that gig? How did she get that job? Is she a token appointment? You're obviously qualified, as was being mentioned earlier.
No, I think people know I'm qualified. I think, fortunately for me, I've done it in the game. I've been around. I'm known now. I think I had to work very, very hard. People probably don't know how hard I worked. I was very fortunate to know Chris. He was one of my mentors. He helped me out a lot, actually. I was very fortunate. But I did have to work very, very hard to get where I am. And I'm known for that. I think it's the next generation of female coaches that need opportunities to work in the game. And that's the problem we have at the moment. So a lot of male coaches are now in the game that stops the progression of female coaches in the game. So as coaches, we are, let alone being black, if you're black and female, you're at the bottom.
But if you're so skilled, you can come into this house, if you're so skilled, Chris Rams is there, he's proved it. Paul Elliott's coached, he's proved it. Andy Impey's at QPR, he's proved it. What's the problem?
What do you mean?
If there's a problem, if there's an issue, why are there so very few? I asked Chris the question earlier. In his position, how many of you, in terms of equivalence, do you see, Chris? None. Like I heard the orders. So there's nobody outside of Chris Ramsey on this panel, in this country, in a game where we make up a sizable minority, or we could say visible majority, of players of colour playing the game, but in a managerial capacity, in a leading position within the game, one. just the one. Is it racism? Is it barriers? You just said yourself, Hope, that there are very few jobs. So there's so many people looking to get jobs. Is it really an issue of colour?
For me personally, I think that in the men's game, I think there definitely is an issue of colour. I think if you look at the number of black players in the game now, black players that are qualified in the game now, and there aren't, it doesn't match up. So there's something that doesn't quite fit. So for me, there is a conscious and unconscious bias going on in terms of, you know, employing people of colour in the game.
Okay, I'll come to you in a second, Howie. Andy Impey, you currently coach at QPR. You're sitting next to one of your bosses. You hear him say, well, you know for a fact you've played the game. And you played the game more recently than anybody else on the panel. But yet, would you want to go into management? Are you just happy to be a coach? Do you think you can go further? Having just heard your colleagues say openly for everybody, I am the only one in the position that I am in. Where do you see yourself, Andy, in 10 years' time on your coaching journey? Would you like to be a football manager, Andrew?
Hold on, so in 10 years' time, or in my 10 years in coaching?
Well, in 10 years' time, you're a coach now. Where would you like to see yourself within football? Ideally. England manager? No, Jamaica manager?
I'll be on the Grill Beach.
On the beach?
Jamaica in 10 years' time.
On the beach. What's your aspirations for yourself right now as a young coach? I think you're coaching the under-23s at QPR, am I right? You're part of that setup, right? That's very senior. So where do you see yourself? Les Ferdinand comes and says to you, do you know what? Mark Bircham's going to move on. We want you to assist Ian Holloway. We want you to be his assistant manager. Will you take it?
No.
Why?
Because, see this guy next to me?
Yeah.
The best. When it comes to coaching,
When it comes to coaching, he's one of the best.
When it comes to coaching and player development, so people talk about this person, that person, When it comes to player development, and the problem what sort of happens in first team environments is you develop at under 23 level, under 21s, whatever it is. Then when you get into the first team, you stop developing.
Right.
So what happens is it's now about winning 3 points. It's about getting 3 points. So you kind of work on set plays, phases of play, this, that, and other. This is what we got to do. This is how the other team plays. So blah. See this man?
Yeah.
You can ask any of the lads at QPR who was there when he took over. They continue to develop because he insists that you develop. So you could be the best of the best. You can still get better, and he'll make you better. So what I would do is I'd say, love Ian Holloway, but Les, you know what? Move Ian Holloway out, put Chris Ramsey in, let Ian Holloway be his assistant. If it's the case, let Ian Holloway be his assistant.
No, hang on a minute, my phone's ringing. I think it's, hang on a second, it's Tony Fernandez actually, the owner of QPR. Andy Impey said it. Yeah. It was Andy Impey. Okay, your career's over now. Before we go to the break, and I'll come to you, Howie, I'll go down the panel. In your lifetime, in our lifetime, England manager, do you think we'll ever see a black England manager? Football manager?
Will we see?
Will we see an England black football manager?
Nah.
You don't think so? Chris, black England football manager in our lifetime, yes or no?
I'm hoping it's going to be Chris Hughton.
You hope it's going to be Chris Hughton? Republic of Ireland? Never!
Listen, one of the things, just to sway off a little bit, one of the problems that we do have is I've worked with two people that I've said that's given me a leg up, Ricky and Les, and both of them, by giving me the job, there's been inferences that they're racist by giving me the job. So when I worked with Ricky at Luton, we were the first ever black couple as a manager and an assistant. And then Brian came on. I mean, three of us on the sideline, probably a little bit too much for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Very serious, that point there. Can you imagine that? You look down at the sidelines and there are three black faces in those positions. What, are they planning a riot or something? What's going on? Must be carnival season.
But when when Les employed me and then employed Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank,
wow,
there was a little bit of an uproar from certain people that he was racist. So, I mean, picking the best man for the job, we're not even allowed to do that.
Without it being questioned.
And let's be honest, we're dealing with two highly intelligent people that are not going to put their reputation on the line just for the sake of the colour.
Okay, thank you very much. Paul Elliott, in our lifetime, you played the game at the highest level, Paul, so you know the ins and outs. You're an ambassador for the game now. Do you think we'll see a black Gareth Southgate? Or a black manager?
You might see a black chairman before then.
Do you think, because you know the game, do you think that the FA and this country is ready for a manager of colour?
I think, if I'm truthful, the FA there's been challenging times that I think has been well publicised. What I would say about the FA, you know, like life, like people, there's a lot of awful good people, but I also think as well there needs to be change. And when you talk about change, it's not necessarily about legislation or policy, it's about people. And last Thursday, I hosted at the FA. It was a fantastic evening. Ricky attended, Mark, a lot of Chris, a lot of distinguished people, the highest order.
I wasn't invited, but I'm not bitter.
That's all right. Well, you were a busy man.
I'll be next time.
But what we have got, and I have to say, notwithstanding all the obvious challenges, we have got a very good chairman at the FA, a chap called Greg Clark. And Greg Clark, I've worked with 5 chairmen at the FA over the last 15 years. And what he's done, he put his head above the parapet and he recognised some of the failings of the FA where they need. He was very honest.
Yep.
And honesty and transparency are very two important things. And what he said was, I know we need to change. I know where the FA needs to get better. The FA has to take the lead as the governing body to have more BAMI, you know, male and female coaches, to be the exemplar, to set the example.
Yep.
So his comments were, I mean, he referenced Ricky and others for their outstanding contribution to the game, which I thought was fantastic. But what he did say, during his tenure, he wants to make change, and he will make change. Because I have a level of confidence to know, forget about perceptions and reality, it's about people.
But in your lifetime,
and he's made a pledge.
Back
he's
to the
made
question,
a pledge.
in your lifetime, do you think we'll have a manager of colour, or I'm not fighting to say it, a black, not urban, but a black manager of the England football team?
I think the answer is yes. I'll tell you the reason why. If you look at a lot of the England junior teams now, in terms of the composition and the makeup of those teams, there's 65% young black talent that's coming through. And I know if you look at the stats, the data, in 1960 we had the first black manager, Tony Collins. Now, there's only 3 or 4. But I think the next generation, there's a lot of work. When we talk about our parents making sacrifices for us to prosper, in this footballing world, you Ricky Hills, you know, Chrissy, Les Ferdinands, myself, we've all done our bit to enable the next generation.
Yeah.
They've got far more money, they've got far more prestige. You're going to see the next generation buying football clubs, honestly. And I just feel that I'm the eternal optimist. I think, without question, if you look in the next 15 years, there could be somebody there.
Okay. Pat Nevin. Thank you. Pat. Well, Martin O'Neill played for the Northern Ireland, he now manages the Republic. So he didn't play for the country he manages. So we're clear on that. Capello managed England. He's an Italian. So Sven Goran Eriksson, so we know it can be done. But do you think with the advancements you've seen in the game, when you played for Everton, the big chant was when John Barnes was at Liverpool, Everton are white, Everton are white. Do you think in our lifetime, would there ever be an Englishman managing the Scotland? No. Can you see a black man managing?
Well, first, 2 points, first of all. First point, tempted to say, what do I care? I'm Scottish. As long as we have a black Scottish manager, that's what I'd like.
Yeah.
The Everton point, I have to actually make a point about that. When I went to Everton from Chelsea, I initially refused to sign because it had been made clear for me no black player had ever played for Everton, and I was concerned. To which the manager, Colin Harvey, says, I have to let you in on a little secret. We went for Mark Walters, we couldn't get him, so we got you instead. So I was second choice.
Wow.
So I went, do you know what, you've no idea how happy that made me. So Everton actually, it wasn't at the time the manager that I'd worked under was. Black manager in my lifetime, well, I might not live that long, but if I get to my 70s or 80s, I think, yeah, I think it will happen. I have a real belief in it. I think the trailblazers that I have around me, other people will stand on the shoulders of these giants, and they might not know it. And that bunch of people up there might be one of you lot, and you don't know it yet. But you have more opportunities because of the guys that have gone before you. It's a shame that it's taken quite so long, and it's 30 years behind the time, but biasness and bigotry takes a wee bit of time to move on. So I think it will happen. I'll say one other little word in the midst of this, and Paul and I just had a wee quiet discussion about this here. See if Antonio Conte left Chelsea tomorrow and they decided to put Emma Hayes as a manager, I would not bat an eyelid. I think she's fabulous, and I think she'd be good enough.
Oh, fantastic. Ricky Hill, you know, played for England, 4th black player, managed in America, managed Luton Town. You're not a manager now. Still got lots to offer. There are people here bearing witness and testimony that you're one of the greatest footballing minds around, but yet you're not in the game. In your lifetime, well, now in our lifetime, do you think we'll see a manager of colour managing England?
Black British, perhaps not, although the candidate pool is so thin.
Yeah.
We have Hope, who's managed an international side anyway. Will she take the men's side? We have Chris, who's capable of doing that. We have Chris Hughton likewise. That's the three that I would say, if anyone of my generation was going to go and do it during my lifetime. As a foreign manager, a black foreign coach coming in to become an England manager, I can possibly see that happening. If Frank Rijkaard became available and said, I love England, I really want to work in England, he will be taken seriously by the FA. If I, as a 3-time Coach of the Year award winner in professional leagues in America and Trinidad, if I went to the FA and said, I want to become manager of the England national team, he'd show me that exit sign and say, thanks for coming. So from that perspective, I think it's highly unlikely black British, but possibly black European.
Okay. We heard from Hope before. Howie Gow, you, again, look at this panel, gone from one end of the spectrum to the other. You've been there, seen it, done it in your lifetime, what you've experienced and what you see in the current game. Do you think there'll be a manager of colour before you die? Which hopefully will be a very long time of the England football team.
No chance.
Wow.
No chance.
Why people are clapping?
If you've got black underrepresentation at manager and coach level, how would you think that they're going to employ a black man with the highest job in the country?
Wow.
I mean, so you have to look at the reality of it. And just going back to Hope's question before about a woman managing in the Premier League, you have to follow a process. I do a lot of talks for the Labour conference, and last year a woman in Leeds asked me the question of why the women's game is underfunded compared to the men's game. And I said to her that you're asking the wrong question. You should be asking why, if women are good enough, why aren't they playing in the men's game? And I think within the next 10 to 15 years is that you'll see women playing in the men's game.
But isn't there the argument because of the physical presence, the physical? This is what's. I mean, I see Hope looking at me, but this is what's often said. Women can't play
the men's game, the physical contact has virtually been taken out of it. So it's leaving the way open for women to. Nikita Pallas again, she plays for England. She grew up on the AstroTurfs in Toxteth playing every day with the boys. That's how she learns her craft. She's mentally and she's physically tough. And I think again within a short period of time, once they realise the logistics of it, I think the danger with employing a woman in the Premier League is that chairman and maybe fans think, oh, here we go, we're going to have half of our team full of women. They're not going to have that. So again, it's following that process. I think women have to prove themselves in the men's game, and then what would follow would be they'd have the confidence then to employ coaches or managers. Yes, Hope.
Just a couple of points. I appreciate what you're saying, but women don't want to play in the men's league.
Right.
Women don't want to play mixed football.
Right.
With all due respect, women want to play in a league, in a women's league, in female competition, and be respected and valued for that.
Right.
That's what women want. That's what women want. Yeah.
Well, okay. No need to apologise. All right, ladies and gents.
If you offer a woman the same money as what Premier League players are getting now, I'm telling you, you're going to get a player who's going to say, yes, I'm having that. Yeah, or I'll try it. I'll be a trailblazer.
Turn your mic off.
Sorry.
It's getting hot in here.
Hang on. I'm not saying that women don't want to be valued for what they do. So yes, if you offer me
150 grand a week.
Whatever a week, of course I want it. But if you're talking about playing on the pitch, is that what you're talking about? Playing in the men's league? I'm not. Hang on. I'm talking about playing.
Hang on, Howard.
I'm talking about playing on the pitch. We don't want to play me against you, man against woman. I want to play against my own gender.
Well,
if you're telling me, and I'm not finished,
right,
if you're
apologies.
telling me about, do I want to be paid £150,000 a week, Dan Carter? Yes, you do, don't you? Do I want to be paid £6 million, actually £1 million for managing one game and getting the sack? Yes, I bloody do. That's what I want.
But do you hope then? Well, if that's the case, if that's the analogy, so do women want to just manage female-only teams? They don't want to manage male teams in the Premiership then?
No, I'm saying listen, I know I'm good enough to manage in the men's game. I know that there are plenty of women that are qualified pro-licence holders that don't get the opportunity to manage in the women's game. So tell me how they're going to get to manage in the men's game. They can't get a job in the women's game.
Okay.
How many coaches are male in the WSL 1? Right. How many?
Well, the coaches here. Just by show of
9
hands.
out
How many
12?
people here, how many people in the audience here are currently coaching at any stage or at any level of football, whether it be Parks football? Show of hands. How many people are currently coaching at any level of football? Okay. How many men are coaching female football teams? 2, 3. Chris, 4. Okay. Ladies and gents, that's our distinguished.
How many women in the room are coaching in men's football? 1.
No, I asked those who were involved in football. No one put their hands up. The question I asked was, who was coaching at any level of football? I didn't use the words men in the first instance, Hope, and only men put their hand up. So, but if you want me to say how many women, blah blah blah, I purposely use the language. How many people are coaching at any level?
Yeah, but if you question most young people now about the professional game, they want to come into the game because of the lifestyle, not because of the passion. And that's how people. You ask me what do you want to be? I want to be a footballer because you get a nice house, a nice car, everyone loves you. That's the lifestyle. We grew up because we were passionate about football. Again, Ricky said to you before, you were out kicking the ball against the wall. That's how you were coached, you learned yourself. Modern day footballers now are a different breed, and everybody now plays football for the money, not because they love it. It's very, very rare that you find somebody who's passionate about the game of football.
Fair enough. You would know. All right, ladies and gents, that's our panel. We're going to break for 20 minutes, go to the bar, get something to eat, whatever. Then we're going to take the microphones into the audience. And I'm going to specifically say, there are a couple of areas we are not going to touch. Everything else is on board you can talk about, but for legal reasons, there are a couple of areas we still cannot talk about. So ladies and gents, microphones out in 20 minutes time, and you can ask what you want to ask. Our panel so far, thank you!